Last year there was a big campaign against female genital mutilation, which was trying to include also men campaigning against it, and I think that campaign has had several good results in different countries. Like in Kenya, it was taken very seriously by the NGOs.
In the last few years, most West African countries have approved some formal legislation that tries to grant women equal access to natural resources. These laws are not necessarily always immediately implemented on the ground, but they still constitute an instrument that activists and women's groups can use to argue for more equality.
Last year, when the new Namibian parliament and the government was sworn in, it was the first time that the ruling party in an African continent had effectively endorsed 50-50 gender quota. So all the ruling party members in the parliament were equally divided between men and women.
Well, the obvious major achievement in Africa as a whole, but South Africa included at the moment, is the representativity and leadership of women. Now that's a new phenomenon in Africa. And so that's a big jump from where we were in the 1990s.
Zambia has been experiencing a major economic crisis in the last year, and women have risen to the challenge. They have grown food, participated in urban agriculture. They have increased trading activity. With their participation in the economy, we're beginning to see them make increasing demands for inclusion in Zambian public life.
And one of the key progresses that has been achieved in this area is that for both husband and wife, so they have equal entitlement to the use of the land, equal right to the land. So this has given women quite a substantial empowerment, I would say, when it comes to access to land.
Well, and of course another achievement that women in Angola and Mozambique have been able to secure over the years was this possibility of having their own national organizations. They organize many activities, many joint activities, mobilizing the women and making them participate politically and socially. So those are very important women's organizations created in these countries after independence.
Especially where there is circumcision, and that has there is a growing awareness of how harmful is that, and that shows you how the gender issue has been getting awareness.
The abuse of women is prevalent all over the continent. Some of it has to do with culture, but some of it has to do with power. And until we look at those things, women will always be the face of poverty in Africa, will always be the face of violence, will always be the face of sexual abuse, will always be the victims of war and conflict.
Girls and women's right for their own body, right to decide how do they engage in sexual relationship, right to rule how do they want to plan their families when they want to give birth.
Many studies have shown that the position of women usually gets weaker in the short term when a certain economic sector is taken over by formal market. So we need to be very careful to the development path that we have in mind and how this will affect women's livelihood.
I think we are still paying too much attention on the numbers in the sense that increasing women without giving them real power, like in decision making, in parliament, in governments, and often the power doesn't come with the numbers. So I think it should be more equally distributed. But that's not only African problem, that's all over the world. But I also wanted to mention that 2016 is the African Year of Human Rights with special attention to the rights of women. and vulnerable groups. And I hope that that means that the African governments will take the women's position and gender equality seriously.
Even though the participation of women is growing, at least in national parliament, but it does mean there is a genuine empowerment of women.
If the husband dies, women are not all women, especially those that are involved in these polygamic relations or that are not legally married to this man, they'll be unprotected regarding their inheritance rights.
It's about attitudes, cultural norms and values, and how society define the different roles that men and women play. So I think this change in attitude and how people define their roles, their everyday life, their everyday engagement is much broader, and I think this will take quite a long time.
A huge improvement would be investment in public infrastructure like water and sanitation, so things like public toilets, providing access in informal settlements to water. I think those kinds of investments would be crucially important. Childcare for children to cushion, because they carry a heavy burden, but at the same time they have little gains. That would make a big difference.